Hello and welcome to another episode of the Help Yourself podcast with me, Claira Hermit. My guest joining me today is a vegan chef, he's an author, and he was the winner of the big audition on ITV, is Brett Cobley! Woo! I feel like everyone deserves one of those like intros, you know?
That's it. We can put a studio audience clapping sound in and stuff
woo,
like that in the
woo,
background.
Yeah, and then you could just run into shot. We didn't do that bit.
This
You're
is Brett.
here.
He's our man.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of thing.
If he can't do it, no one can.
Yeah, man.
So this is the Help Yourself podcast, and I wanted to start doing this podcast because I realised that there's kind of loads of mistakes that I've made, or I guess like in my personal life, but in my professional life as well, and the two kind of intertwine and mix up and affect each other. And when I look at other people that are doing amazingly well, like yourself, I wanted to sit down with them and have conversations with them about what they've been through, how that has affected them and how they've overcome those things and how they've managed to create what they've managed to create, basically.
Okay, wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Not a lot, though.
No? Okay.
Not a lot. No, it's a lot. And like you, so one of the things that I find fascinating about you is that you like were so focused and hardworking at becoming an engineer.
Yeah.
And you like threw yourself into that so hard.
Yeah, pretty much made myself sick by doing it, yeah.
So how long were you doing that? 'Cause you started it as an apprenticeship, right?
Yeah, so I was an engineer for over 10 years. I left school because I had an argument with a teacher. I was never like the best student. I always got good results and things, but I was never the best student in terms of if I wasn't interested in something, I just didn't really do it or didn't try. So I was an engineer for like 10 years. And I left school because I had an argument with the teacher. I wasn't like the best student. I always did well kind of like in my results and things like that. But like in terms of actually, if I wasn't interested in something, I just didn't do it. If I wasn't into it, I just wouldn't really turn up and stuff. And then, I was driving to school one day and a teacher cut me up and we got into a bit of a heated confrontation and I just didn't go back to school. Asked my brother, what should I do? Like, what would you do if you were like in the same situation? And he was like, I'd probably go do an apprenticeship or something like that. So I started an apprenticeship in engineering, did that for it was like a 4-year apprenticeship, but I did it in 3 years because I was just driven. It was like, oh, it's make or break time now. You have to do it and throw yourself in. So yeah, I did it in like 3 years, and then they put me into a manufacturing engineering position, and I threw myself into that. Did that for a few more years, and then Jaguar Land Rover got in touch with me, and they wanted me to go and work with them.
You were headhunted.
They were really like fast expanding company at the time, so they messaged me and asked me to apply and stuff. So I went and did that. And then I moved up to Liverpool, lived there for a while, moved down to Birmingham, lived there for a while, like kind of getting promoted as I kind of moved around. And then, I went vegan about 3.5 years ago after I had a conversation with someone and he talked to me about blood test results and how vegans had really healthy bloods and stuff like that. I watched 101 Reasons to Go Vegan, decided to do it. And at the time I was trying to get my next promotion. Yeah. So I was like, my boss knew I wanted my promotion and he put me on one project and then his other boss put me on a different project at the same time. One was on days, one was on nights. So I was literally like going to work, making sure everything was okay on the day shift and then like getting a few hours sleep and then like getting back on the night shift. I was just doing that like day after day, trying to make sure both things were running because I was just so driven towards the goal of, for me, it was always like, that's the end goal. So your method of how you get there can change, but the goal doesn't change. So whatever it takes, you do. Yeah, that's just always been my kind of mentality with anything. And I had a chat with my mum one day and she was just like, why are you like working yourself to death? Why are you doing all this stuff? And I was just like, oh, because I want to be like the youngest LL5 in the company that's like just a few below like director level. Yeah. And she was like, oh, so you'll be happy then? And I was like, oh, I'd not thought about that. Like, I just thought about the goal. I didn't really think about my own happiness or where I'd get because that was just all I was focused on. And veganism became a big part of the journey, really, for me.
Because I remember you said, so you had that, someone at work said to you about their bloods and health and et cetera, and you were like, yeah, okay, but it didn't make you instantly go vegan. No. Wasn't there a time when you saw a dog or something that you...
No, what it is, so basically, I decided one of the things I'd do is I'd just literally Google search it, like reasons to go vegan, pros and like cons. So I'm a big proponent of looking at both sides of every story, right? I never want to be stuck in an echo chamber. So just because I've heard veganism's good, I don't want to go like, oh, that's the thing, and like, I don't want to not look at the other side. So I looked at pros and cons, and this video came up called The 101 Reasons to Go Vegan. And in the video, he talks about if you walked outside right now, so say if we walked outside the studio and there was a dog in the street and someone was hitting it with a baseball bat, how would you feel? What would you do?
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, I was never like the biggest animal lover, but I was like, I would never let someone hurt an animal on my watch. Like, and I would never let them do the same to like a kid or like an old person or whatever, someone who's defenseless. So I was like, I'd jump in, I'd probably hit the person, I'd ring the police, I'd do all these different things. And then he says, and how would that change if it was a pig? And I just thought, it wouldn't change at all. I'd do the same thing because I just wouldn't want to see an animal in pain. And I was looking into like Buddhism a lot at the time and things like that as well. And like how that kind of pain affects your soul because we're all one. And it just made me think, oh, I'm being a hypocrite. Because if I was there in the moment and I was able to stop that happening, then I'd do something about it because I'd feel responsible. But in society, we feel a diluted sense of responsibility because even though we're paying for meat, we're paying for an animal to be slaughtered or to be kind of tortured, we don't feel responsible because we're paying someone else to do it. Yeah. And I just kind of thought, oh, I apply that to all the other elements of my life and it doesn't really make sense for me to live this way. So I actually went vegan straight after watching that video. Mad. And it was an interesting journey. I didn't really know what to eat at first. Obviously, that might surprise people as I'm like so into food now. And obviously, I've got a cookbook and things like that. But I had a couple of weeks where I didn't really know what to eat at all. And then I set up my Instagram after a conversation with one of my friends who I kept sending pictures like, I can't believe this pizza that I made is vegan, or I can't believe this pasta dish is vegan, or whatever. And he was like, why don't you set up an Instagram and kind of just show people what you're doing? And obviously, my whole family like told me I'd die. Like all my friends told me I'd die. They told me protein deficiency, I'd be deficient in all these different things. So I was like, you know what? I'll put 3 meals a day on Instagram, and if I do die, they'll know exactly why. Like they'll be able to go like, he was deficient in this because of that, and like they can track it back. So I started putting that up.
Was that genuinely it?
I just thought that was like funny to show them like, this is what I'm eating. So if I died, like you can go back and look at it and be like, oh yeah, obviously he wasn't getting enough protein or deficient in B12 or whatever. But obviously that didn't happen. I'm still here today. But more people kept saying, oh wow, like I can't believe you can create that as a vegan. Can you send me a recipe? And I was like, oh cool, yeah. I didn't ever think about a recipe at the time because everything for me was always, I talk about it like this, like if you're going to bake a cake, that's science. You need to do it as the instructions tell you, else it's going to flop or it's going to be too stodgy or whatever. But cooking's art. If you don't like the meal you've made, it's your fault because you should have tasted it on the way. And if it's too spicy, well, put a little bit of spice in and then try it and put a bit more spice in. Like any error in cooking, it's always your fault because you should make it so it satisfies yourself. So I always used to cook like that, you know, a little bit at a time, checking things out. But then I started writing recipes to kind of help people out and help people on their vegan journeys. And I was always propped up and I was always buzzing that people would message me and say, oh, my mum's thinking of going vegan because I made her your lasagna or I made her the curry or anything like that. And so I started sending people recipes. And then HarperCollins, the book publisher, slid in my DMs and said, do you want to go for a coffee? We'd really like to talk to you about doing a book. And yeah, we kind of went from there.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and obviously What Vegans Eat is the title. Yeah. And that kind of all fits in with the mantra of
what do you eat?
I didn't really know what I was going to eat, yeah.
You didn't know what you can eat, but whenever people find out you're vegan, not so much now, do you think? Like it's a bit better now, but people are a bit more aware. It used to be like, but what do you eat?
Yeah, so I went to a festival at the weekend actually, and I'm really keen to do non-vegan festivals as much as possible because it gives me the opportunity to talk to people who've got those questions. Yeah. It's all great to go to like a vegan festival and everyone like cheer on every word and you know just agree with everything you say. But as I said, I'm massively anti-confirmation bias, so I want to go and have chats with people. A lot of people at the festival are farmers as well. So I did 2 different dishes. One was a hoisin tofu bowl. Because I wanted to show people how to cook tofu and how to use it. So many people in the audience, I asked them straight away, have you ever tried tofu? Do you like it? How do you feel about it? And everyone was like, oh, I tried it once. I hated it. Yeah. I'm like, what kind was it? And they don't know. Yeah. And I'm like, you probably tried silken. It was probably slimy. You probably didn't really like it. It wasn't a good texture. I'm like, this is a firm tofu. Yeah. I'm going to show you how to like fry it and cook it and make it taste really great and like get some good texture out of it as well. So I show people that, and there was 3 or 4 people messaged me that night and they'd made it already.
Wow.
From the festival. So that one went across really well.
Yeah.
Someone told me their husband's thinking about going vegan now, which was great as well. And then I made a smoky bean stew.
Yeah.
And that is just like literally one pot meal, so easy to make. You do a bit of chopping and then you open a few tins. Like, it's a really, really easy meal. And that's just for anyone who says, I'd love to go vegan, but I've not got time.
Yeah.
Not got time to prep everything or whatever. Well, that will literally take you 5 minutes to put everything in a pan and then like 10 minutes to simmer it. And it's super easy.
Done.
Yeah.
So when you were working as an engineer and you were doing like the day and the night shift, it just seems, knowing you now, it seems mad to consider that because what else did you have time for outside of just working?
I didn't really have time for anything else. I didn't really value anything else though at the time.
Yeah.
So I moved up to Liverpool for a while, and that was like kind of away from my friends and family and stuff. I thankfully made some really great friends up there. But then when I moved down to Birmingham, I was so focused and blinkered on achieving that next promotion and kind of the next point of my career that I just kind of ignored everything else. I didn't make any friends in Birmingham because I didn't really think about it. I didn't really value that as a concept at the time. So yeah, all I was doing, I mean, sometimes I actually even stayed in hotels near work so that I didn't have to travel home, so that I could just like be close and then go straight back in. And yeah, I mean, I went and saw someone to talk to. They weren't like a psychiatrist, but they actually were in a Buddhist temple.
Yeah.
That I went to talk to, and part of it was I couldn't sleep, even when I'd done all those hours and done all those shifts, like I was doing, 18, 20-hour days, and I just couldn't sleep because my mind was just racing all the time, and I felt like my mind was almost like sabotaging me, because even when I got to a point where it was like, this is the time to rest, this is the time to chill, my mind just wouldn't let me shut off.
Switch it off.
I had a moment that I've not told a lot of people. I've spoken it to people a little bit about on my podcast, but had a moment where I texted my best friend and I was like, the sound of my pulse is making me want to kill myself.
Because it's so loud.
It's so loud in my ears because I can't sleep. It's just making me want to just kill myself because I was just fried.
Yeah. I
was so burnt out. But two massive things on that journey for me to kind of start thinking about. Have you ever seen I think it's called Ikigawa, the circles where it's like what the world needs, what you have to offer, something you're good at, and it's like a vocation of some kind, or like what you're passionate about. It's all these different circles. It's a big Venn diagram.
Yeah.
And in the center is like happiness.
Right. Okay.
And it's basically like, if you're good at something, the world needs it, you can get paid for it, and there's another one in there as well. Then in the center of that, if all those things come in contact, then that's like happiness because you feel valued for it and stuff. And when I started on the vegan journey and I felt like I could help people, I drew myself a new Ikigawa kind of Venn diagram, and I put one big circle around the outside, and I was like, that's the world as well.
Right, okay.
And everything I do needs to incorporate the world. It needs to make sure that just because a brand's telling me that like I'd be really useful doing some kind of campaign for them, if it has any negative impact on the world, I'm not going to do it because the world is the kind of big circumference of the
Where did that insight come from? So did that come from the journey into veganism? Because if you're there and you're in this it's all about, I guess, kind of the consumerism really, in a way, that you're just focused on this goal of getting to a higher and higher goal to earning more and more money so you can get the stuff that you're supposed to have, like these check boxes, and not questioning whether or not that's right. But then to now be in a position where you're like, no, everything that I do has to be for the good of the whole as well as for myself. How did you have, or where did that insight come from?
So the other element, there's two elements that I think really were a big factor. There's obviously other things, but like veganism was one, because I started thinking about the whole world in all the different decisions I made, and about other people's pain and suffering being as important as my pain and suffering. Yeah. But also, I watched something called The Minimalist. Have you ever watched it? No. On Netflix. Two really interesting guys. I think it's Ryan Nicodemus and I forget his first name, but it's like Fields, Melbourne. Yeah. And they went around America talking to people about minimalism, and they have like a really interesting theory, and it's just that you don't have to justify any of your belongings to anyone else, but you have to go through them and justify them to yourself. So you have to think, does this item add value to me? Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, if someone's got a massive book collection, but they're really, really happy with all the books and they love them, or like records or whatever, that's fine, keep your books. But if there's something else that you bought purely out of vanity or to show off or to keep up with the Joneses, it wasn't a valuable purchase. Because take a phone, right? We buy a phone and we might buy like the latest phone. But actually when the new phone comes out, your current phone that once upon a time was a sign of like utility and how much we could use it and how great it was to us, actually shows now a sign every time we use it as a sign of dissatisfaction. Yeah. Because we wish it was the new one. And that just isn't helpful to society or it isn't helpful to your own mental health. Neither is using, so obviously I'm on Instagram a lot, and I'm on social media a lot. But when I'm on there, I'm always thinking, is what I'm doing adding value to anyone? Or am I just giving people fear of missing out? Am I just giving people FOMO all the time and showing us a life that isn't realistic because I'm not even living it? Am I just showing the best parts all the time? Or am I using it as a platform to try and give people insight into how they can help themselves? Like your podcast is a great example. Yeah. You're doing a help yourself podcast, which is like a way that people can hopefully get better and overcome certain things. So I have to kind of answer not only my belongings, but also my actions to myself. I have to justify them to myself. And that actually set me on a journey to sell my house and my car and most of my possessions, which is mad in a lot of ways. Like, and it's probably quite an extreme method. Yeah. And some people might see like veganism itself as extreme, right? People want to take small steps. I see myself very much as someone who's going to the extremes to show other people how far they could go. So, you know, if you want to go vegan, but you're like, I'd love to go vegan, but, you know, I couldn't give up cheese. Cool, give up everything else but cheese. Yeah. Live by your own words. You just told me you could do it all but this. So do it. And, you know, after a few months or years, if you feel like, actually, I'll probably give up cheese now, that's great. That's another step. But make a step, move forward in some way.
But it... I'll learn how to talk in a minute. But no, when I listen to you, and it's that whole kind of thing of, you sold, like, you had a house, you had a car, and for most people, they're like the two, like, they're the biggest things. It's like, okay, there's family, people want to have a family, but when it comes to kind of those material things that I guess society says that are a sign of like success, or a sign of, you know, like where you should be by a certain age, like those measures, having a house and having a car are two of those big things, and also having a job, like, and climbing the ladder in that job and becoming more successful. So when did you know that this doesn't make sense anymore? Because for someone who, when you listen to your story, for someone who was so focused and this is the goal and I'm going for it, when did you go, oh, because you did a U-turn. You've done, like, when you listen to that, you actually went the opposite direction. Not went back on yourself, but you just literally turned your back on everything. I
just took a different branch.
But that's a big different branch to take. Yeah,
I mean, if you can go as quick as you like in the quickest vehicle you can and progress. If you go in the wrong way, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. And it's ultimately pointless. You're actually just making more things that you're going to undo. But I was going to say, but some people might have gone vegan, but stayed on that career path. Like, you know, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I just felt so a big part of that kind of, you know, that Venn diagram of being useful was if I couldn't add value to the world, and ultimately I felt that I was doing a job that I was very good at, but was it helping people ultimately? Not really. So unless I was doing something of value, it just seemed pointless to me.
Where did you find out about the diagram? How did that come about?
My brother actually showed me that diagram. Oh, really? And I was very into something that I learned at like university and college and things like that. I did a degree in engineering and business management, and it was always to do with how you can communicate change to people, how you can analyze your strengths and weaknesses. So there's something called like SWOT diagram, which is like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we use a lot of those tools for like business, but we rarely use them on ourselves. So I did a lot of those. I looked at a lot of those tools on myself, and I looked at my own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I looked at a lot of my weaknesses were kind of self-made and self-sabotage. I looked at a lot of my strengths were being used, but in a way that wasn't of benefit to anyone, let alone me. I started to kind of really analyse myself and really look within. We spend so much time in society looking at, you know, do you think 9/11 was an inside job? Do you think we ever went to the moon? And who shot JFK? But we don't look inside ourselves, because that expedition is the only one that's important, really, because that actually helps us ultimately. And we can idle away time on loads of other things, but unless we look in. And it was the journey was about really being honest with myself and saying, okay, not just what do I want to do to be happy, but how can I be of service to other people? Because in my experience, times when I've done things like I used to volunteer at like a homeless shelter and things like that, they were actually the times I was most happiest. I wasn't getting paid for the time. I was, it's not even really like the people there will thank you, because it's not what you're there for. You're not looking to get thanked. You're looking to be of service to people. And I think we're all on a very much a path that isolates us from other people, because in our own head we're very worried that if we interact with people and if we give them the benefit of the doubt that they're probably going to be a kind person, then we're really worried that we're going to get kind of burnt from that. But yeah, I've in my experience, when I was kind of service to other people, that was when I felt the most happiest.
Was it just curiosity that made you have that that interest in the internal, like to question your own kind of your thoughts, your beliefs, your place in the world? Was it curiosity, or was there something that you were like, oh, because you said it, like we're all so focused externally, very much so. We live in a world that tells us like everything that's important is outside of us. Every single thing that's important is outside of us. From we take value ourselves on how many friends we have, what our social life is like, how much money we've got, how many things we have, how much designer stuff we can afford. That's the stuff that actually boosts people and makes them feel good. Okay, it's short-lived, and then they have to chase the next high, and then they have to chase the next high, or it might be drugs, or it might be alcohol. And like for me, it was a chance happening that someone gave me a copy of the Secret DVD to watch, which is obviously about law of attraction and metaphysics. And I remember watching it and just it really pissing me off and annoying me, because I was so miserable and upset and depressed and unhappy, and it just said like, think positive and you'll magically be happy. And I was like, but how do I do that? And it wasn't until I started that there was like a succession of events. I guess like we all have these different things that stand out to us where real changes were made. But it wasn't until that started happening that I had to even look at my own thoughts and what I was believing, and then to accept responsibility for the fact that what I was thinking and believing was creating the life that I had. That was like horrible, because I was like, no, but I'm a victim. I want to be a victim. So for you, was it just curiosity that made you go, right, okay, now I'm going to start to do this interrogation internally and work things out? Or was there something you read or something you saw that made you even realise that there was that internal world?
Yeah, I think a very good indicator of future behaviour is past behaviour. Right? So if we think about how someone else is going to treat us or how we're going to act, easiest way to think about it is, how did I act in the past? Well, actually, recently I was, putting off going to the gym when I was doing all these things. I was being lazy. But really, in my past, I knew what I had was a massive work ethic. It's just I was applying it to something that wasn't fruitful to anyone. It was just money-based. So I knew I had the work ethic, and I knew that I could unlock parts of my brain that no matter how tired I got or sick or didn't want to go to work, I just kept going all the time, because, like I say, the goal was the goal, and, my methods could change, but I would never give up on it. So I just started thinking, if I've got that level of power to achieve these things, imagine if I turn that tractor beam and point it at something else, and start pointing my life in a more positive direction. So I started looking into internal, because I thought all the times when I have achieved things, I could do that, but in a more positive way. And yeah, I just think our mind is ultimately limitless, and there's so much more in there that we can kind of explore. So yeah, kind of looking inside myself, because I was curious at what could be achieved and what could change. Ultimately, I think a lot of people, so I've got two main kind of ethoses that I live by as well. One is that it can sound very negative, but life is ultimately pointless. Right? So we're going to die. That's the only thing we know. We're going to die one day. We're not going to be immortal. So while you're here, let's stop thinking about a building that we could buy that's going to stand for thousands of years after we're gone. And let's start thinking about all the people's lives we can touch, and in the moment, people who might be suffering that we could help. And the other one really is that I believe massively in determinism, and that is literally that there are people on this planet that were born in much worse circumstances than me. I mean, people talk a lot about like white privilege and like white male privilege especially, but like take that to the nth degree. Like there's people born with that clean drinking water and things like that, right? So we all have a sense of privilege in the way we were born. And the way we were born and the people we were born around affect us from a moment when we can't make decisions for ourselves. So people talk about things like, would you feed your kids a vegan diet? And you're like, well, yeah, because I eat a vegan diet. And they're like, isn't that forcing it on them? Well, wait, none of us made a decision what diet we ate when we were a kid, because we were a kid. We just got fed whatever we got fed. So all of the decisions that we make up until a certain point aren't really ours. Yeah. So we don't really have that free will because other people make all those decisions for us. So I feel that we're all on a path where the free will that we think we have is actually just all the past that's still happening. We got put on a path. So realistically, I realized that I'm on a path that now that I've had other external factors come into my life and made me think in different ways, you can change your path. You have the power to do it, but you need to be aware of like where you came from, and you don't want that victim mentality. It isn't powerful or useful. No,
and I think that's something that I started to realise recently, and certainly about the subconscious mind. So not understanding that the subconscious mind actually runs it's like 95% of our life, and the conscious mind runs 5%, but the subconscious is programmed by the time we're 7. Yeah. So it's like an empty computer, and it's imprinted, and then it makes so much sense when you look at behaviours. Even if you look at like people who are starting wars and etc., it makes sense that those beliefs, those programs that they're running on, are still ones that they had as children, that they got as children. And when I started to realise that, and I really had to look at my life and look at the things that I wanted to do, but I guess when I started to look, didn't believe I could. And what are those limiting beliefs, and what are those beliefs that are there that are actually stopping me from doing what I want to do? And I've said this on another podcast, but I call it cock blocking. That's what I've started, because it's I literally I've blocked my own life in so many ways. Now when I look at it, I started off doing content and doing interviews and churning them out at a time when no one else was doing what I was doing, and getting crazy views on them. But because of a few other people's opinions, probably aligned with the opinions I had about myself, which was I didn't really like myself very much. I didn't think I was that great. I stopped doing them. And if I'd continued, I don't know where I'd be now. I'm not someone who's going to be I really regret it and let that control my life. However, having those realizations has made me have to go, if I don't change, I'm just going to keep repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Yeah. And getting the same results.
If you had continued, and you'd have been confident to the max. Yeah. And you might have also felt though that you deserved everything. You deserved all the success, and it was just meant to happen, and you were the chosen one. Yeah. So I think you can learn things from anything that happens, right? The fact that you didn't do them, now you know that next time you're not going to stop. It's like that meme of the guy digging and digging and digging towards his goal, and he just gives up a meter before it after he's done all the work. So you've learned a lesson. You know now you're not going to stop. Yeah. I look forward to coming on for the 1,000th podcast.
Yeah,
episode.
Exactly. When it gets to 1,000,
we'll do a whole party.
Because there's apparently this whole thing. I don't know what they call it, where podcasts that don't get past the 20th episode.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's this whole thing. So that people
wicked.
Start them and then they just.
I'm past.
There you go. Way. Because you've got your podcast as well.
Yeah, the Brett Cobley podcast. It was originally called The Bad Cult, but no one really got what I was trying to do with that. So
it was called the what?
Bad Cult.
Okay.
Just because it was trying to be the opposite of a cult. It was trying to be freedom of ideas and freedom of speech. Yeah. And even now, obviously the name's changed. It's the Brett Cobley podcast, but I try and give people a platform where even if they have a bad idea, we're still going to discuss it and run it to the ground and see where they're coming from, because of that determinism aspect that I talked about earlier. Whether someone does something very, very good or very, very horrendous in society, I don't blame either of them. I don't really congratulate myself on anything I've achieved, because I'm programmed to do it. I can't not do what I do. I'm a very driven person. But likewise, if someone does something in a society that's really bad, I think there's a level of accountability that needs to be there. So people need to be accountable for their actions. But I don't blame them. I don't think, they're a bad person because they've done something I don't agree with, because they've lived a very different life to me. If you grow up in a household where you're abused from a very young age, and you grow up in a fight or flight mentality, you're going to go into the world feeling like you're in the jungle. So you can't really blame someone for that, but we need to identify and hold people accountable for their actions.
Do you think that's ever going to happen? Do you think that, not identify people and hold them accountable, but do you think like we live in a world that is obsessed with external stuff, that is obsessed with consumerism, that has this, it's almost like this giant monster that just seems to get bigger and bigger. And like, I know sometimes for me, I find it overwhelming that there's sometimes you have a group of people around you who are like-minded and it feels like really supportive and it feels really nice and it feels really great. But then you step outside of that and you realise that there's so many people that are so far away from everything that you're talking about. And sometimes when I'm put in those positions, I feel just defeated.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. You can experience a time when you're around a lot of enlightened people and then you go and chat to other people and you can feel very much defeated and very deflated about the kind of state of the world. I think the positive thing in that is that you don't actually need to change the whole world. You actually need to change a really small percentage because the world itself is broken up into kind of players.
Yeah.
And I consider yourself a player.
I'm a player.
On every level.
Watch out.
I would say a player in terms of you're someone who wants to get stuff done. You're someone who wants to change people's perceptions and change their minds and ultimately help them, yeah? But then you have the next biggest category is like sleepwalkers.
Yeah.
Most people are just doing what I was doing. They're doing the 9 to 5. They're going towards a goal that they don't even remember when they set it, of like paying off their mortgage or getting a bigger car or whatever. And they just keep going down that same path because they never really look external. And then you've got like underminers and like snipers, people are actively trying to sabotage what you're doing, right? So you actually only need to really change the sleepwalkers, as many of the sleepwalkers as you can, because the other categories don't really matter as much. They're people that are actively looking to destroy. So if you can change enough of the sleepwalkers, you can actually get a lot done. But if you look at kind of anything, the way societies set up, the government, anything like that, it's a group of people that we elected.
Yeah.
We can stop that at any time if you get enough people together.
But that's the thing, isn't it? I think I was talking about this weekend. It's like getting enough people, because the whole point, I think, is that when you are in debt with your mortgage, with your car, you've got a family, there's a fear attached to anything, because you want that stability. Even if it's not great, people would rather stay in their comfort zone, which might not be great, than they would risk that comfort zone for, in their mind, they'll perceive what could be worse. Because I think that seems to be what humans do. Rather than being optimistic and looking for the best, we think, oh no, it could get so much worse, and how would I cope, and how would I pay my mortgage, and how would I afford this, and how would I afford that? So people kind of go into this like mad panic, and then so they'd rather just stay in that space. And I feel like unless it gets to a place which is not great, where people can't afford to fucking eat, I think that's when people will be like, shit, now we've got to do something. But otherwise, people just seem to put up with stuff. As humans, we just seem to put up with it.
So you kind of think the system needs to almost fail before it'll ever change?
I don't understand how people, because people will put up with it. People do put up with it. Like, there's things that we kind of all complain about, but we can get around it, or we can cope with it. And a lot of people that I speak to as well, where I think we don't have any education on politics unless you choose to study it, but you don't even know. Like, I left school not even knowing like the difference between like Conservative and Labour, right and left wing. Like, I didn't even know what any of that stuff was. And even my dad, who I would just like say is an intelligent man, like he's had his own successful businesses, even he's like, I've never voted in my life. Like, I don't see the point, because it just doesn't affect me, or I don't really, because it feels heavy. And it feels like when you've got enough to deal with, do you really want to concern yourself with another thing? And it's just... Ugh.
Do you think your dad would vote, though, if he felt represented by any of the people?
I don't think...
Do you think if he actually felt like any of the people gave a shit about someone like him, who, like you say, is a successful guy, but you've told me about your dad before, he's like a working man. He's like he's a grafter, yeah? If he felt like any of the people weren't, these like Oxford, Cambridge educated people who had no idea what he's doing or what he's ever had to go through, he might have taken more of an interest in the people, because they might have actually represented him in some way.
But I also think it's about accountability, and that politicians are never held accountable. No. So they say, oh, I'm going to do this, this and this, and then they might do half of one of the things they said they did. So it becomes like, well, yeah, I'm voting for you because you might represent me and you're saying you're going to do these things that I want to happen. Yeah. But then you never do them anyway, so...
Yeah, I don't think there's really options there. at the moment. When I look at the kind of political system, I don't really think that there's many options there where you can actually choose for something different.
Yeah.
You can choose for the country to be led a different way or go in a different direction. I think that's massively though, because you don't really have many options in terms of politics in general. So you either have a dictatorship that's in it for the long haul and can actually change the course of how a country's going, but aren't actually accountable to anyone because they're going to keep doing what they're doing, whether that's like a monarchy or a dictator. Or you have this system of like every 3-4 years, someone new in charge. So ultimately what you have to do is just straddle the line slightly away from the other person to say, we're the other option, we're the more liberal option, or we're the hardworking man's option, or whatever. Yeah. Just because you need people to like you because you need the votes. You can't say, oh, actually, we're upon hard times, we're going to cut certain things, or we're going to put a lot more money in the NHS or in education, and we're actually taxes are going to have to get higher. We're sorry. You can't do that because you have to get people to like you. Ultimately, it's a popularity contest. We see that in America.
No one likes Boris Johnson.
Well, we've got a reality TV star as president of the USA. Yeah. Ultimately, he perfectly showed how you can use clickbait and use the media as it is today to get elected. Say something bad, people click on it. Say something good, people click on it. But all you need to do really is stay in people's minds. Look at the two people, and obviously, I don't want to go. I hate going into people's aesthetics and the way they look too much. Yeah. But they're almost like caricatures of people, both of them, the way they look, right? Boris Johnson, you would remember his face anywhere because he's a very strange looking dude in a lot of ways, yeah. And the same with Donald Trump. Ultimately, they're just people that were at the forefront of people's minds. They're just people that are known for things. So I think ultimately that one of the things they've actually taught us is that we're a victim of our own minds in so many ways and just recognition. Yeah.
Why do you think we're so... Because a lot of times as well, like, I mean, we've spoken about politics, we've spoken about, I guess, touched on almost the ideas of spirituality. But there's a lot of people that you could come to with just like maybe some basic ideas of kind of, you wouldn't even have to frame it as spirituality, but you could talk about limiting beliefs and the way the mind works. And people just be like, no, they don't. Like, people will push it away and they don't want to know, and they'll continue in that external world, but their life will be very turbulent. I find that with a lot of people, like their relationships are very turbulent. They're very up and down because they're so unaware of themselves.
But all of that kind of stress, anxiety, the turbulence that you bring into your life, you do it subconsciously because you don't want to actually address anything. Yeah. So you don't really want to. That's why people will have money in their bank account but not pay a bill until 2 days before they need to pay it. Yeah. Because actually they're distracting themselves with the rush of giving themselves an external thing to focus on rather than looking inwards. Yeah. We don't look inwards often enough at all. Yeah. We don't. I mean, when's the last time most people do? It's hard talking to you about it because I know you're someone who does it quite a lot. But like, when's the last time most of the people that are listening did a self-check? When's the last time they woke up and they said, "How do I feel? Do I feel tired? Did I sleep well last night? I didn't sleep very well. I wonder why I didn't sleep very well. What time did I go to bed? I went to bed at 11. Is my room dark? Was I on my phone until I went to bed?" We don't do these self-checks often. We woke up and we go, "I'm bloody knackered." Yeah. And then we drink a can of Red Bull or have a coffee and we go to work. We don't ask ourselves those questions about, how's my health? Or, my girlfriend's very happy, but am I happy? Am I happy in the relationship? Do a little audit, Could I do things to make myself happier? Could I communicate better? Or my parents, are they happy? Could I help them in some way? Could I do something that's, for the good of other people? Or even makes me really unhappy when I pass that homeless person on my way to work every day. Oh, why does it make me unhappy? Oh, because it makes me feel uncomfortable about my level of comfortability in my own life versus their uncomfortability. Could I do something for them? Could I buy them breakfast on my way to work or do something? An amount of money that we might have had saved for another ASOS order at the weekend. Yeah. Because we don't want to go out in the same outfit again because we think everyone's going to like us better if we buy more shiny things. But with stuff like that, those kind of checks and accountability, it's like I would urge everyone to find out who your real friends are. Yeah. I would urge you to not buy the newest car that's going to make all your friends ask for a lift, or maybe make that girl or boy you like ask for a lift somewhere, or just the biggest lesson in life is like most people don't care. most people don't care about the outfit you're wearing or the gadgets you've got. And the people who do care about that and put value on it aren't important to have in your life at all.
But what about social media? Because obviously you use that as a business tool. That's how you created your profile, and then you obviously, like you said, the book deal came from your DMs, which is nuts. So it's obviously a handy tool, but some of the things you just touched on there, like having a different outfit every weekend to wear, whether it's the cars, whether it's whatever people are posing with and making their life look like on social media. And I know you said earlier about making sure that actually I'm not just showing a little glimpse of my life that's not really a true reflection of my life.
Yeah.
How damaging do you think social media can be, and how can we make changes so that it's not damaging or not as damaging? Do you think that's the responsibility of everyone individually?
It is the responsibility of everyone individually, because everything we just discussed is ultimately marketing. Yeah. Isn't it? You know, the number one trick of marketing is get some beautiful people, get them to use the products, or put them in a situation where people will see them, and ultimately it will make that product more desirable. But, you know, we need to think about, do we want that product, or we just think we're going to look like that person if we start using it or whatever? And then with social media, it is ultimately our responsibility to start using it in a more, more socially effective and truthful way. In terms of, I've talked about when I've had low days on social media. I've talked about when I've had happy days. I talked about that this birthday that I've recently had is the first birthday in as long as I can remember where I actually felt happy. And that was because I'd previously used birthdays in a way that we talked about earlier, which is to give ourselves a benchmark of, okay, am I earning as much money as I wanted to earn by this age? Have I got a house? Have I got a car? They were the questions that I'd always asked myself, and think, oh God, should I be married with kids right now or something? This birthday, I was like, I feel like I'm in the right place. I feel like I'm helping people. I feel like I'm doing the right things. And anything that I offer, so whether it's a cookbook, ultimately I'm have a cookbook on sale so that I can encourage more people to eat more vegetables and try and harm the environment less, right? I never say that it's going to be perfect. We're always going to harm the environment in some way. We're literally harming the environment just by being here. So it's about doing the best we can. And then, like, I've played with the idea of, I've got some samples for like clothing that I want to bring out, but ultimately we have an issue with fast fashion. So I'm never going to like do a deal with Primark and just put go vegan on a t-shirt, because ultimately all I'm doing is destroying the environment in another way. So instead, I'm offering people like very ethical clothing that they can get from either recycled materials or organic cotton that are made, like none of them are made in sweatshops or anything like that. It's all about, can I justify to myself anything that I'm offering to people through social media? And if I can't, I shouldn't do it. Yeah. Also, like, you should never advertise a brand that you wouldn't shop at yourself because you don't think it's that ethical.
But loads of people do that.
Yeah, tons.
Loads of people do stuff like that. Loads of people just take the check and advertise. So being, I guess, like a conscious influencer, if that's even a thing. If it isn't, I've coined a new term. Congratulations to me. But if you're a conscious influencer and then you're seeing kind of, what other people are doing, which is just churning stuff out, and, I don't know, sometimes I'm like, oh, because people will say impact over numbers, that's kind of more important because you're impacting people. But it's also this idea that, that there's people out there that are kind of they're just churning stuff out, and it's so unnecessary and we don't need it. Yeah. And it just is like, and also that kind of, like whether it's makeup or stuff for your hair or whatever. And I am someone who wears makeup, but there was a time probably about like 4 years ago where I was like, why? Yeah. Why am I wearing it? Am I wearing it because I feel like I have to, or am I wearing it because I actually like doing it? Yeah. And then I was like, well, I think I like doing it, but do I like doing it because I've been taught that this is, makes me look good and then I'm more attractive, and I went through a stage like, and I don't wear makeup every day, but I used to, but now like I'm comfortable to not wear makeup. I went through a stage, Chrissy's shooting this, where I grew my body hair, and I just wanted to be like, I didn't want to have to live by standards that other people were setting for me anymore. I wanted to kind of like break free of those shackles, I guess, in a way, and have those questions. But there's so many people who don't ask themselves those questions, so then they literally don't like their own, I would say they think that their self is their body, but they don't like themselves so much that that's what's convincing them to buy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that why so many influencers or just not the term influence, but people of influence, whatever they're doing, whether they're, you know, cooking food, and I didn't really even know that could ever get me to a place where I was called an influencer, or whether they're a musician or a model or anything. The reason so many people use that tactic of never being seen twice in the same outfit or anything like that is because it works in terms of it gets people to look at you more. Yeah. People are just trying to distract you constantly. What's happening over here? What's happening over here? I'm doing this event. Buy tickets, buy this, buy these items. Because people are encouraged now. I was on a panel the other day talking to people about how the next generation is looking at using social media and how people are influenced by it. And one of the things they were talking about is the fact that the BBC are doing a documentary about the fact that people at universities can't go out in the same thing twice. They're literally going to the student union in a different outfit every single week, and they're just constantly buying a new outfit. And they're shopping at places that are very cheap because they're like, oh, but that's what I can afford. Stop thinking about what you can afford and getting that, and think about if you need it in the first place. Do you actually need it, or have you got other things you can wear? And that's the same with a house, you know. We go to a bank and we ask them how much we can have on a mortgage, and they say, you know, this many £100,000, and we go, cool, I'll go and buy a house that's that amount. Yeah. You don't have £100,000. You have an amount of money that they will guarantee you a loan for that amount. Yeah. And then you're going to have to do the same job over and over again to try and pay it off. Do you want a house? Do you want a 3-bedroom house? Do you want a 2-bedroom house? Do you want this thing, or would you like the freedom as well? I just think, you know, we tie ourselves up with the material all the time. Yeah. But all I did anyway, I can only speak from my experience, but I just built a cage for myself with pretty things. Yeah. And it becomes like a prison, doesn't it? Because you have to pay for those pretty things. And to pay for them, you've got to do something that you don't like doing. Yeah. And then I guess, like when you're talking about that diagram, I can't remember what it's called. It's like Ikigai. Yeah. Ikigai diagram. And at the middle of it is happiness. It's ultimately that, isn't it? Because you can have all of these different things, and you might have moments of happiness. It's like, oh, I've got this new whatever it is, and you feel happy for a moment. But what someone actually said to me, which I find really interesting, is that the happiness and the relief comes because you see something you want. Like, say it's like a pair of shoes or whatever. So you see this pair of shoes and you're like, I want the shoes, I want the shoes, I want the shoes, I want the shoes. And your mind is going, we need the shoes. Don't forget about the shoes. I really want those. Should I get those shoes? Should I not get those shoes? I think I'm going to get those shoes. When I get paid, I'm going to get those shoes. Those shoes would look really great. I want to wear them next weekend. And then when you buy the shoes, the thoughts stop for a short while until they then go, I want that dress. I want that dress. I really want that dress. I think we should have that dress. And so it's kind of like the relief. It's not just happiness at having the thing for a second, but it's also the relief of your mind just shutting up that kind of incessant chatter about wanting things. The same as people need, you know, should be encouraged to take stock of their lives more on an emotional level and, you know, ask themselves, do a bit of a checklist. I just encourage people to do the same with their clothes or their things. Get all your things, chuck them on your bed, and go through them one by one. When was the last time I wore this? I mean, things that people like the minimalists will teach you is to do things like get a load of those string tags and put a tag on everything you own in terms of like all your clothing. What, like number them? So you know how many you've got? You don't even need to number them. Just put a tag on it. A tag that you'd have to take off if you're going to wear it. Right. And if you don't take the tag off in 6 months, you didn't need it. You didn't wear it. So give it away. I started at the start of this year. And don't go and buy another one as soon as you give it away. Yeah, but that's what people do though. Yeah. Just replace it. I started at the start of this year where I was like, right, I'm not going to buy any new clothes for the whole entire year. So for the first 6 months of the year, I didn't buy anything because that was what I'd set out to do. And then I had a moment of weakness because it was my birthday, and I was like, I'm going to get a new outfit for my birthday, which but my mind is so sneaky. It was like, yeah, but look, and it was justifying like why I can get a new outfit because it's my birthday, and I went backwards and forwards, and then I brought like a new outfit for my birthday, but that one outfit turned into like 3 or 4 outfits, and it kind of got like, you know, it got like out of hand so quickly. And I was like, no, this is the whole point that I stopped this. It wasn't because people were like, it was for the environment and it is for environmental reasons. But people were like, why don't you just buy vintage stuff or secondhand stuff? But it wasn't about that for me. It was about taking back control of my mind that keeps going, buy this, buy that, buy this, buy that. I wanted to just have a year, which I haven't had, but I had the first 6 months of that year where I just didn't buy anything. I just used what I already had. But I failed. The moral of the story you've not failed, have you? You've achieved 6 months of not buying anything, and that's amazing. A part of the problem is we educate ourselves as much as we can, right? And when you have the privilege to know, you have the obligation to act, and that's what you were trying to do. You're trying to act on the obligation that you knew this information about not. you know, getting involved in fast fashion and things. But you didn't fail. You've not got to quit that now and go and buy things every weekend. It's like anything. It's like, you know, veganism's not a diet. If you've eaten a pack of crisps and you're like, oh shit, they had milk powder in. Oh, you don't go, well, I'll start eating steak now. Well, it's pointless, isn't it? Because you're like, oh, damn it, I'll put that on my list of things that pack of crisps have milk powder in.
Yeah.
You know, and you go, oh, I won't have another pack of them.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the amount of positive you've done by not eating, you know, animal products for all that time is still there. It's not gone away because you've undone it with one thing.
Yeah.
So you need to continue on a positive path.
Yeah, no, I have gone back onto it, but I think the only thing that I've brought since then has been jeans, because the ones that I had previously, like where I've got chub rub on my thighs, the whole inside of them had worn out and had massive holes in. And yeah, so that's kind of like the thing that I'm
But that's good. Buy, but... That one out, one in is amazing, isn't it? I mean, have you heard of the what's it called? Like Project 33?
No.
Project 33 is getting 33 items of clothing.
Yeah.
And trying to wear them for a month. Okay. Just the 33 items. Yeah.
Does that include underwear?
Doesn't include underwear, no. You have to turn them inside out and back to front and all that. But yeah, 33 items.
That's quite a lot though, isn't it?
It seems quite a lot. It does include shoes. Yeah, it seems quite a lot. So that mentality of that seems quite a lot. Cool, do it. Do it for a month. Okay. Don't tell anyone about it. Obviously, people on the podcast will know, but like, don't tell your friends or colleagues about it, and see if anyone notices.
You're just wearing the same stuff.
Because they won't. No one's going to go, you worn that top before.
Yeah.
And if they notice, they won't care.
Yeah.
Because they feel as much pressure from external sources to keep mixing it up as well.
Yeah.
So actually, after a while, when you like, I think you should do it, right?
Yeah.
And I'll even do it with you.
Okay.
Right? I barely wear 33 things anyway, but I'll do it with you. Okay. And we should document every day and go, okay, this is what I'm wearing today. And then after the month, put it out there as a little video and go, the last month I've worn 33 things. How many times was I asked about it? I wasn't asked once.
Yeah.
Because no one actually notices, but everyone thinks everyone's going to notice. You know, people will be taking pictures on Instagram. I can't wear the same thing again. Go through my feed. You'll see me in the same stuff all the time.
Yeah.
No one cares. And like, I used to think I looked stupid when I smiled. I smile in all my pictures now because it's genuine. If I'm happy, I'm going to bloody show you.
Yeah.
So, you know, I just think we're so focused on looking cool or looking
good
in the new fashion all the time or whatever. And it's just, people don't care that much.
So Project 33.
Yeah.
Does one pair of shoes count as one or does it count as two?
Counts as one.
Okay.
But the problem is everything that we've talked about, you know, looking inwardly, buying less, things like that, you can't make money out of it.
No.
So no one cares. Like brands aren't going to encourage you to wear less stuff because they can't make money out of it, right? Also, I thought until I looked the other day, and the two biggest meditation apps at the moment, one's just been valued at £1 billion and one's just been valued at about £450 million as well. The two biggest competitors in meditation apps. So it's definitely a market there for it in terms of people using less. And
being more conscious, I guess, as well.
Exactly. And that's what my talk at Vegan Camp Out was about, conscious capitalism.
Yeah.
You know, I genuinely believe that anyone's conscious and cares about the environment and is going to spend money in an ethical way has a duty and obligation to try and earn as much money as they can.
Right.
Because if they can do it in an ethical way and they're going to spend it in an ethical way,
just keeping it in that.
Everyone thinks vegans are flipping hippies that money's the enemy. I shouldn't earn money. I should live off, you know, hemp and I should have tie-dye, everything. But no, you can be a member of society and just spend your money in an ethical way.
Yeah.
But you should make it your mission and obligation to earn more money than people are going to spend it on steak.
It makes sense because I think in this society that we've created, money is power. So if you want the power to be with people who are conscious and who have ethical beliefs, then the more money that those people have, then the more powerful those people become, and the message gets spread further and it becomes wider spread. So it does actually, like, it makes so much sense.
Yeah, and that works on both sides. It works on the money you spend, but also the people that are paying off politicians.
Yeah.
Also, they have a big amount of power as well. Yeah. And they're paying them to do things like look the other way on whether it's, you know, fracking or whatever it is.
Yeah. Just giving them a quick bump up. Before we've gone off on like mad tangents and stuff and spoken about loads of stuff, but I really wanted to just focus on you and the fact that you've managed to kind of to create your brand and to create a business, to turn yourself into a business. And for a lot of people, even the concept of that would be like completely alien or nuts. And I think the biggest thing for me that I've found, or the hardest thing with that is that I take things too personally.
Okay.
So in terms of like whether it's negative comments or it's things that people actually say to me in person about the content that I'm creating, that I will allow those things to affect my output of work. So how do you, I guess, like separate the business Brett from the personal Brett, or you don't have to?
I don't really separate them much, which is probably something I need to look into more. With your stuff, I'd say anytime you feel like that, you know, feel free to give me a call, because I genuinely think you're great and you're doing a good thing. So like, give me a call and go, someone said this, and I'll go, yeah, fuck them. But I think about it in any way, like whether I'm public speaking or whether I'm putting myself on a platform, 99% of people want you to do well.
Yeah.
If someone doesn't want you to do well, they want you to fail, it's probably because they're in like a lot of pain and they're not in a good position in their own life. And that's where like the jealousy will come from, or things like that. Or maybe they're just someone who's in those traps of feeling like they have to wear a new outfit every weekend or whatever, because they're like, how dare he go out in the same stuff all the time? I feel the need to like do that. So that's one thing. But in terms of building a brand and things like that, I wanted my brand to be completely free and open in terms of, I never wanted to be like, oh, I can't talk about that brand because I've like got to deal with them, or I can't talk about that because it might affect people in a different way. I'm like, these are my thoughts and opinions, and I will talk to anyone or debate them on anything. And if you change my mind, even better. If you've changed my mind and made me think a different way, I'm not married or tied to any of my thoughts. They are just thoughts. So yeah, I try and make myself completely open like that. And then I try and build my brand on things that align with my ethics and morals. So for instance, like 3rd of October, I'm going to do a live podcast, right? I've got 2 people on that I love. I've got someone called Laura Callan on, who's set up Brightsy Mag, and I've got Rachel Ammer coming on. 2 people that I think are great. They're not just people that I wanted for their followers or their influence. They're people that I want other people to follow. I want to promote those people.
Yeah.
And I got sponsors on board that I would use anyway, and I would promote anyway for free, because like, if it's not a product that I would use, why am I promoting it to anyone else? So for things like that, for things like events, I also didn't realize how easy it was to do something like that these days. You only need to go onto like Eventbrite and go, I'm making an event, this is how much tickets are, this is where it's going to be,
done.
That's it, it's done. And then just send the link out to people. And yeah, same with anything else I'd promote, like my book. You know, the more copies I sell, the more people who might have one more vegan meal a week. And that's just a massive positive. If I can set things up on little things like that, I'd say, you know, I'd encourage anyone who's doing anything like influencing or, you know, whatever they're going to do, making social media part of their brand, multiple revenue streams, because you just can't count that a company's going to sponsor you to post something on Instagram or sponsor you to wear something or do something. You need to make sure that you actually make things on your own terms. So things like my podcast or my channel, obviously you could get deplatformed by YouTube or you know, iTunes or whatever, but ultimately, whether people love it or hate it, whether someone says that you're cancelled because you've said something you shouldn't have said, or they don't think you should have said, it doesn't really affect me, because I'm my own boss, so I can't get fired. You know, if you don't want to follow, don't follow. That's fine. You know, I encourage people not to follow. If someone sees my content and it annoys them to the point where they want to be nasty to me or a troll or something like that, or it just makes them feel bad, if they look at what I'm doing and they go, I wish he wasn't doing so well, it makes me feel bad, don't follow. You should, for your own sanity.
But how do you never let those, like, people's words, how do you just not take it personally? Because it isn't personal. I
love them. Like, I genuinely feel like we're all one. Like, genuinely, I don't blame them for saying it. If I've annoyed them in some way, I feel bad that, like, I'm a source of their dissatisfaction with their own life. Like, ultimately, when we look online and we look at other people, we're looking at a mirror all the time. Yeah. Right? And if I've made them feel bad, I feel bad for it. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, mate, but I'll probably unfollow me. Yeah. Like, and you know, some people will message you and go, got a cooking question for you. What is it? How would I season this steak? I'm like, good one, mate. Like, if you ever want to talk about veganism or take it seriously, the environment, the fact that the Amazon's on fire, or the fact that in the next few years in our lifetime we'll actually have climate refugees who are wanting to come into our country because they can't live in their own country anymore because it's either on fire or it's underwater. When it gets to that point, you take it seriously, come back to me and I'll tell you how to season tofu.
But when you say that to them, do you say it like, what's your feeling when you're writing that? Is it like up yours, or you're saying it from a place of love, or
most of the time, if I'm in a bad mood, so I'm unhappy with myself. Yeah. Again, that's not them. Yeah. That's me. It's in me what I'm feeling. I'll just put I love you. Okay. Like, hope you're okay.
So you wouldn't, if you were in a bad mood, you wouldn't reply.
Yeah, or I'll block it, or I'll just block them.
Yeah, block them.
But if I'm in a mood where I actually think, you know what, depending on what they've said, I actually might be able to change their opinion on this. Yeah. Like, someone messaged me and they said, you as a vegan are doing more harm than me. And I was like, oh, like, wow, if I can do something better, tell me then. So they said, I'm a carnivore, right? I only eat meat. And I went, okay, so like, how are you doing less? And he said, if I only eat grass-fed beef and I have one steak a day for a year, I can live off 1 cow a year. And I went, okay, so let's do the maths. So I worked it out how much an average steak was, having it 3 meals a day. I was like, you know what, mate, you're right. You could have 1 cow a year, right? I was like, is that how you live? No. Okay, where's the argument then? He was like, well, if I did that, like, it'd be doing less. I was like, okay, so if we had grass-fed beef, so it needs land to graze on. Yeah. I was like, we'd need multiple earths to feed everyone like that. Yeah. So if we had, everyone was eating beef and we wanted them all to be grass-fed, and they weren't being fed on soy and they weren't in a barn, they were grass-fed, then I still wouldn't agree with killing them, but we'd need multiple earths to have them all grazing, right? Because we've got over 7 billion people, right? Yeah. I was like, so it wouldn't work for everyone. So I'm telling people how everyone can help the planet. I'm not talking about everyone doing it. I'm like, oh, so that's just what you want to do? It's like, yeah. And I'm like, I don't know why you messaged me then. Like, if that's what you want to do and that's what you're doing, like, go off and do what you're doing if that makes you happy and you feel like you're doing less damage that way. But just be aware, like, I looked into both sides of the argument when I went vegan because I didn't really want to do it. I literally thought, do I have to go vegan? Is that the only thing I can do? Are you sure I can't just stop wearing leather or stop wearing as many clothes or eat more spinach or something? Like, there's got to be another way I can do it. So I looked into all the things, and the things I found was like, you know, to farm vegetables, we still need to, like, they'll still kill vermin, or they'll still use a combine harvester and it'll kill insects. And then I looked at it and I was like, yeah, maybe that's a reason I shouldn't do it. So I looked into it and I was like, oh no, but when they do meat agriculture, they actually farm vegetables or farm grain
and then feed it to them,
and then feed it to the animal, and they have to do that multiple times to feed the animal. So it's the least efficient way you could possibly eat. And veganism, I'm never going to tell anyone veganism is like doing zero damage. I mean, I said it in a talk recently and the crowd didn't really like it, but I said the only way to be zero impact is kill yourself. Yeah, it's true. It's the only way to be zero impact. Yeah. I don't want to kill myself. I quite like living. So I'm going to try and reduce my impact as much as possible. Not perfect, but I'm on a journey. Cool.
That's my little round of applause for you. I enjoyed that speech. So let's talk about, just before you go, because I know that you like to read. If there was like a book that you could tell anyone and everyone to read, what would that one book be?
I'd say the book that got me into reading, because I hated reading as a kid. The book that got me into reading, I was stuck at Berlin airport. I had like 8 hours into my flight and I was stranded. And I read a book called The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf DeBelly. And he took lots of other people's ideas and put them in a book. And every single chapter is just a different thought process that's an error. So it would be things like, there's one in there called The Swimmer's Body Illusion. And it's basically like, if you want to get fit and you want to get a good body, people will look at like a swimmer and go, well, they're always built really well. I'll take up swimming, right? But ultimately, the thing that makes them good at swimming is probably the genetics of them being tall and like muscular and things like that. So it's little errors like that in terms of decisions we make in life that we think are going to satisfy a need we have, but actually lead to dissatisfaction because we realise that wasn't the answer we needed. But then, David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me. I find him very inspirational in lots of ways. Sapiens, great book. Yeah. Sam Harris, Waking Up.
Yeah. Lots of different ones there, lots of recommendations. Yeah. And just your advice for, because you've said that on your Instagram page you share like the ups and the downs of your own life. Like if you're having a bad day, you share it. If you're having a good day, which I think is really important because it's real and everyone is part of the human experience to have both sets of. We have to have the polarities for the world, etc., etc. Yeah. What would be your like a bit of advice for someone who's having like a bit of a rubbish day to kind of bring themselves out of it?
To bring themselves out of it,
or to deal with it, or what do you do on those days?
It definitely depends what's going on in their life at the time. So if you've been struggling with depression a lot, don't try and deal with it on your own, and don't think it's a sign of weakness to share it with someone else. Talk to someone who you genuinely think cares, and, you know, ask them to talk. Just chat, you know, chat about it. Because, you know, as you talked about those limited beliefs earlier, with depression at the same time, you also have not so much limiting beliefs, but beliefs of the way your life is and the way the world works that are leading you into that depression. You're thinking that everyone hates you, thinking that no one respects you, all these things. So when you start talking to someone and they ask you these questions, you'll actually find that a lot of those fall away. And you'll be like, oh, that was a construct of my own imagination and a limiting belief in effect. And my biggest thing is, if you can, get out and exercise. Just feel a bit of sweat. Go out and go for a run somewhere. Feel the wind. Feel nature. Feel, you know, your feet on the tarmac or on the grass, and realise that ultimately you might be having a bad day, but everything's bigger than you are. And some people don't like that feeling that the whole world's bigger than them. They want to feel like we're at the centre of our own movie or play or whatever. But ultimately, like, on the worst day of your lives, there was weddings and babies being born, and it was the happiest day of other people's lives. Like, don't worry about it so much. You're going to get that happy day. It's just around the corner. You just got to survive.
Nice. I like it. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Tell people where they can follow you if they want to follow you.
Yes, they can follow me on Instagram as just at Brett Cobley. They can follow my podcast, which is the Brett Cobley podcast. It's on everywhere you can get podcasts. And
your book's out now?
Book's out now, yeah. What Vegans Eat. You get on Amazon, you know, WH Smith, anywhere where you can buy books, Barnes and Noble. It's all over the world. And I'd really love to see as many people at my events as well. Like, I'm starting to do live podcasts. I've already asked you if you'll be a future guest, and I definitely want you to be on there. But that is, for me, an opportunity to introduce people to people they might not have in their lives currently on social media, people that I think are of a positive influence and impact, and also to actually give people a hug or shake their hand and say hello to them, and kind of break down those barriers of social media.
And make it real.
Make it real.
In the real
world. Person with real feelings. So if you troll someone, you know.
I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Big love. Thank you.